Hello and welcome to Wait, It Gets Better, the improvisational storytelling podcast where we bring you stories every week without fail. I am, of course, Levi.
I'm Reed.
And I'm Seth.
And we're here to tell you a story. New story, new week. How you guys doing?
Good. Turkeyed up.
Pretty good.
Yep. As Reed so famously has now dated us, Thanksgiving has just passed. Feeling fat and happy.
As soon as it got out of my mouth, it occurred to me that, I shouldn't have done that in case this was going in the can for later broadcast.
Nope. It's okay, Reed. It's good to have landmarks for the year. Anyways, let's see. What did you guys draw last week? I think Levi, I have Magic System.
I have Prophecy.
I have Fiction by Another Name.
All right. And so the Magic System is, I'm just going to tell you all about how the Magic System works. This is just the way that magic works in this world. Prophecies that Seth's going to tell you is going to be, a prophecy is someone foretelling the future or someone foretelling something that's going to happen, whether it be a cryptic way or a really specific way. And then Reed's Fiction by Another Name is really interesting because he's going to sort of choose a different set of fiction. And then we're going to have to kind of make this story match that storyline. Kind of like how Lion King is the story of Hamlet. That's kind of the idea. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yep.
Yeah.
Great. So let's jump into it. Reed, do you want to start?
Yeah, I do. I think you're going to figure out what it is right away.
All right, let's hear it.
AJ Jones, he's making his way back home. He has finished out his compulsory service in Space Command, and he was pressured by government elements to take a position in intelligence, and he was pressured by different corporate interests to take a position, and he just wants to get home. His family had been kind of pioneers on a planet that had been, it was one of those when before all the infrastructure for keeping everybody in touch was in place, a lot of people just had to go out and wing it and make do with what they had and deal with all kinds of things that were different from Earth and yet close enough so that they could make it all happen. And he was just, his family had put together some decent holdings and he was, he knew the lot was going to fall to him. And so he was headed home and he was traveling, not first class. He was on a military service vehicle and it took a lot longer than he wanted, but he gets home and he finds things different. It's the home place. Let's just say all the enterprise of his family had been commandeered by the collective. And his trusted steward that had been the lifelong friend of his father, he had been killed.
I see where this is going.
Yeah. And he takes exception to this. And there are taxes involved. There are all kinds of things. The place is run by lackeys of the collective. And he's not having it. And then some of his people have been really badly treated. And of course, he's not one to stand by in the face of injustice. And he sticks up for somebody that was being badly treated by one of these corporate lackeys. And now he is branded an outlaw. And it's kind of, and he's going to have to figure out, how this is going to work. And, his goal, of course, is to restore justice and restore his family's property and restore the standing of his holdings. And he's up against it. So that's kind of how it starts off.
Seth, did you guess what Fiction by Another Name this is?
Yeah, my guess would be Robin Hood.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I got too. Great. That sounds awesome. So it's kind of a sci-fi Robin Hood. Interesting. Seth, do you want to go next with the prophecy?
Yeah, I will go next with the prophecy. I think it'll be a pretty easy one. So basically, throughout this, either one of the main characters or a side character that isn't exactly involved in a lot of the plot line one of the two. It would make more sense for like one of the main characters, but they carry around a book, right? Their favorite book, and they're always talking about the story, right, of Robin Hood.
Oh,
Okay.
Given that that's the thing. So basically, it's some character in there, like they have an old book, like this was the old tale, and they really like it, and they'll bring it up from time to time, right? And reference from it, talk about it, right?
Okay.
As not that it has to be like, oh, that's what so and so said in their story, but as like kind of that nod to this story that's the other story as it's kind of coming along. And that's why I would say
Okay.
possibly a character that's not directly involved in much of the action scene, like what's really happening. So it's someone you come into contact from time to time with, but they might not be directly involved in the immediate going ons. But that's what I came up with prophecy.
Okay, interesting. So maybe there can be kind of a nod to like history repeating itself.
Yeah, either history repeating itself or that it is kind of the same story, but also in the prophecy ideas that it's like some of these subtle events that are going on are in fact what are written in the book. Not like I think one we did a while back where like that author was writing out like how
that was literally like
things are going.
2 stories ago.
Yeah, not like that, but just it's a nod to that old story, right? It'd be like in the reference we made. It'd be like in Lion King if Mufasa told Simba a story. One of the kings of old. It's like they were wise and they sent their kid off, and then the trusted friend murdered the father, and what can we learn right, and brings up Hamlet, right?
Okay.
And so it's kind of like nodding that that's what's going on here without like, oh, give us the book again. Oh, wow, this is right.
I think I understand. Yeah, I think I understand.
It's so that you as the reader have a bit of like a prophetic idea of what's going on, not so much the characters in the story.
Right. I remember there was a book what was it? Reed, you would probably remember this. But it was like a story about people he thought himself well read, and then he finds a version of the book that he thought that he had read. He lived on like a space colony or something, and he
100% Lunar Boy.
Yeah, he read, and he was like, "Wait a second, this version of the book that I read growing up, this version you have now has like 50 more pages.
Yeah.
What's up with that?"
Well, actually, what it was they were dumbing it down, so it was like had gone from like 400 pages down to like 290 or something.
Right. It was something like that. So it could be also something in that reference as well, where someone has a copy of an unedited Robin Hood, but even the modern Robin Hood story of that day and age wouldn't really match at all with what our hero is going to go through. You know what I mean?
Right. It'd be like they have a copy of, Disney's Robin Hood, maybe.
Right, exactly.
Well, and so you get like the basic high points, right? Like, obviously, like there's, they're going to try to hang Friar Tuck, and there's going to be the archery contest, or
Prince John Bad.
Yeah.
All right, so you guys ready for the for the magic system?
Yeah.
So everyone is born with a certain amount of this energy that exists. Just by the fact of being a unique soul, you produce a subtle amount of this kind of ichor, right? You familiar with the term ichor, Reed?
Yeah, a little bit.
It's the fluid that flows like blood in the veins of the gods.
Yeah, okay.
But it's not a fluid, it's like an energy. And we didn't know about it for a long time. All throughout history, we had people who could do sort of crazy things, but we didn't have any explanation for it until much later, when people started to change much more as space flight became a thing, and we sort of started to understand this. Everyone produces a small amount of it, and it's like a combination of your will and your life force, right? But you typically only have enough of it to like keep yourself alive, right?
Okay.
So there's only enough of it to keep yourself alive. This is the sort of thing that happens when a mother is driving with her children on a rainy night and she crashes, right? the pain and desperation of needing to save her children makes it so that she can forcibly manifest, and she kind of breaks the channels and kind of opens up the channels to allow more of this to flow through, more of her will, right? And more of her life force to be able to do something like lift a car, right? Typically, a person dies right after doing that, though. So soldiers on the battlefield do some crazy bit of heroics, die, or are injured irreparably, because they have sort of forced the flow of energy away from something like the thing that's keeping them alive. Or so that's where you get like twins kind of know what's happening to each other, even separated by space, right? Because their ichor is kind of entwined with each other.
Right.
But what we started to notice, and we've now noticed it in history, is that they're heroes. And heroes are nothing more than mutants who produce an excess amount of ichor, right? Mozart, Shakespeare, Genghis Khan, Hitler, Reagan, what's his name? The hunter of all men in the Bible.
Nimrod.
These people who this is typically what happens, is that when you produce so much more, Cleopatra, when you produce so much more, you can then begin to kind of push it out. So you push out, so you have it comes in two parts. It's the will, like the thing that keeps you alive, and then the thing that binds your soul to your body. So you have like physical power and then like mental power.
Cool.
And you can push it out and you can accomplish these crazy things. Now what happens, there's a couple of things happen which are really terrible, but they happen in succession. A couple of people throughout history have had hero level ichor, and then they'll die doing something spectacular, like the woman who lifted the car for her children. They will do something like that. They will do something like hold the door against 100,000 assailants. They will do something like make a piece of music so good that it kind of shocks and stuns you, right? That it transports you to a different place.
Oh,
right?
So if you are the object of this outpouring of you will be imbued with it.
No, that's not what I'm saying. What they do is they do something in the vein of who they are so great that they die, right?
Yeah.
So like if a warrior who has this level of ichor output is in a fight, he gets into this kind of like terrifying, unconscious, super confidence, being able to see people behind walls, like becomes total Neo John Wick, right? Yeah. But the problem is that if he outpours this too much, then the ichor basically overwhelms him and he turns to stone.
Yeah.
Right? So the woman on the side of the road who's going to lift up the car doesn't produce enough for the ichor to actually kind of overwhelm her system, but the hero does. And so for a long time, we've been shocked and amazed at these like these statues, like Michelangelo's David,
yeah,
right? Which were these statues of these famous heroes, which were kind of perfectly preserved. And it wasn't until much later that we realized that no, this is actually this giant statue of Michelangelo's David is actually David.
Oh, cool.
Right? Something just great and crazy happened to him. And this is, or the one of Genghis Khan over here, or the one of the Mayan emperor over here, or the one of the African, every culture has them.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until recently that people started to be like, oh, wait, these statues exist. Now introduce the modern age. We have discovered the binding and using of ichor using batteries and accumulators, right? So depending on what the hero was doing when they turned to stone, right? If they were doing something really introspective and really kind of delving deep, like the Shaolin monk who was like quote unquote attaining enlightenment and turn to stone, he would be an accumulator. So he was pulling ichor from the universe into him in order to sort of reach the next heights of mental knowledge.
Yeah.
So the statue actually pulls ichor into it. If there was a hero who was doing something really great, like the warrior or the general or the performer, then he is a distributor. And then the fourth one, or the third, the battery is everyone can be used as a battery. And so what they've been able to do is use these heroes, these statues, these stones, and put them into ships. And then they accumulate ichor, and then they can distribute that, and they can convert it to electricity. They use it for faster than light travel. They use it for everything.
Cool.
And a hero hasn't been born in a long time, but what the sort of governments of Earth realized is that in order to push humanity to grow more heroes, they needed to spread throughout the stars and sort of create, and conflict needs to be created, and things need to move along. That's how we're gonna, because a hero hasn't been made in hundreds of years, hasn't been discovered in hundreds of years. Someone who has this kind of crazy control, whether it's they can, seem to speed up or slow down time as they move, or being able to think faster than any computer, but even now people are using AIs and running ichor through modified AI intelligences and trying to build their own thing.
Yeah.
So that is the magic system.
That's really cool.
Yeah. And everyone has access to this. And I would say that maybe some of our people aren't kind of real actual hero level, but there's graduated scales, there's you can access it a little bit more than normal people, so Reed, was your idea that this Robin Hood character would come back? Is it a system that he is
Well, yeah, what had happened was this planet was settled, and it was, kind of in the traditional, different people attached themselves to his grandfather, for example, because he was a guy that when you're in a survival situation, you put down and you have whatever hierarchy that might have been involved in, getting the project going in the first place, and then accumulating the people, and there's leadership that takes place, and then what happens is you've got to produce food and shelter and safety and protection, and it develops into kind of almost a feudal system, if I could say that. It sounds like it's going to be gross and horrible, but with modern people, where loyalties develop and friendships, and it becomes kind of like a family unit and a clan, if you will, and you have holdings where and then some people whose things don't work out as well as others, they get jealous and covet, and then there's raiding and nefarious behavior. So you have to, in a system of, among the Jones clan, of course, there was a system of honor where, people would keep their agreements, or their name wasn't any good, and when you're out here on the frontier, so to speak, if your name is all you got,
I think part of my question was, so I'm just trying to Google it and look up locations in associated with Robin Hood: York, Kirkles, Barnstable Forest, Lincoln, Sherwood Forest, Nottingham, Huntingdon, Locksley. Right?
Yeah.
That's not all on one planet, right? Since
Right.
we're trying to create an analog here, that would be like a solar system.
Maybe, I don't know. Yeah.
So I've got an idea that might, I don't know, it might solve some of the issue, or understand how some. So obviously he's coming back from a military service that was kind of you have to give a certain amount of military service. Obviously we're in the stars. I think that as far as exploration, the mix between different governments or exploratory stuff, you would have a rise of corporations. getting like not grants, but like a charter or a lease, right? So my imagination of this would be like, okay, here is like this planet, let's say like a Jupiter, right? With 5 or 6 moons, they're inhabitable to a certain point. They've been terraformed, whatever terraform system.
Okay. Yeah.
And so a company gets, right, like almost like a feudal lord underneath of like a government, right, gets a permission to colonize this area, right? Because it's like there's millions of these and they need people to go there and look for ore, different minerals, different things into the, intergalactic place, right? And so a company would get like a charter where then the company goes out and you would then hire out to a company, which would then be from a certain perspective, right? Right. To kind of, people would go for this because then it would like, okay, it's like a frontier. There's not like terrible government oppression, right? It's like a new start, but it would be underneath of like this umbrella of freedom under this kind of commercial charter, right?
Right.
And so that corporation has like land jurisdiction, right? They kind of own the land. People go there, and it's like it's kind of free because the idea is to get people to mine some of the minerals, harvest some of the unique, materials, flora and fauna, and then be able to make the market of it and then be able to bring that as the company into the broader market, right? And so what's happened kind of like in World War II, where then companies were like, oh, we need your services for the war effort, right? So now now all of your production, all of your charter, we're taking control of that for our war effort. Because if you think of like Robin Hood, wasn't that kind of what was going on, right? Where you have like, Richard's Crusades. That's why you've got these taxes. That's why, now we're taking your land. We're taking kind of control of this.
And Brother John's back home, like cashing in.
Right. And so when he comes back from the service, finding out that kind of like his family's like corporate charter, there's now like a government sheriff that's like overseeing like not just like the natural like seeping in of the materials and goods into the economy, but actually like, oh, well, the government, because, there's the war on, you need to give, 10, 20, 30% of your, minerals you've mined, and, we take that for the war effort, right? And
Right.
it's like, well, yeah, but right. And so he comes back. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but of course, the Jones clan, they predated the corporate charters. And so they were, there was supposed to be grandfathered. Their holdings were supposed to have been grandfathered in, and that the big corporations that get these charters were not supposed to mess with. The assumption was that there were laws and there were going to be cooperation, and that the original titles would be recognized.
Okay, so to maybe to kind of narrow down what I was meaning by the corporate charter thing is like that's who was kind of like bringing people out there. The corporate charter thing was just that was the outgoing source that's bringing like all of these things. So like the settlers come in and have their holdings and work the land, mine, do things, right? But going off world, that goes to the corporate charter. Like that's who's like bringing people out into the stars, into certain areas, right? So it's kind of like then you would have, I don't know if that made any more sense, but
yeah, no, I think I understood what you meant. But it's a mix, and I had in my mind that there was in AJ Jones's mind that his claim superseded whatever anybody Johnny Come Lately came along with.
Right, and that's what I'm saying is like right. That's because I think in like Robin Hood, right? It's Prince John, it's the sheriff, that government overreach over the charters, the land holdings and stuff that these people would have had, right, under the feudal system that they had, right, to work, to profit from, and to develop, right.
Yeah,
that's what I'm that's kind of what I was getting at with the corporate charters, as far as like, I'm just trying to bring it into like a space age, right? Who would have the money to go out and bring people out here? Well, right. That's where my mind was going with that. And the Johnny come lately is now, let's say, the government coming and saying, okay, we're just going to take all these resources instead of, let's say, proper trade and commerce coming out of these areas. We're just going to come, put our sheriff in place, and impose our, we take what we want because of our war needs.
Cool.
That's where my mind was going. So if that works, or
I think that works.
I think that that the Sherwood Forest should be a giant nebula.
Yeah, and that's cool.
Right?
Messes with sensors,
Yeah, messes with sensors.
Yeah.
It's difficult to navigate.
Asteroid belt,
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's an incredibly rare kind of squid-like creature that travels through and around it.
Yeah.
And it's considered a rare enough creature that the government of the local invasive government has deemed it privatized. They've privatized the animal.
Okay.
Saying you can't kill it because it's theirs.
Yeah, like the Errol Flynn scene where in the old Errol Flynn Robin Hood, where he comes in and Prince John is sitting at table and they're having, their goblets and their platters of dainties and whatnot. And he comes in just with a big stag over his shoulders and just plops it down on the table. And of course, this is one of the king's deers, well and truly poached, of course.
Yeah. That's great. Any other? I'm gonna have to find a decent timeline for the Robin Hood story, because I don't really know it by heart. So we'll have to find that, and then next week kind of lay that out, and then try and start building the parallel for this. Anyone else have any other cool story building elements they'd like to bring into this before we say goodbye to our friends?
You good?
I'm good.
Great. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Wait It Gets Better. If you liked this beginning episode, let us know. Send us an email. Send us a text message. Send us an email at waititgetsbettercast@gmail.com. A text message not a text message. We don't do text messages. You can message us on Twitter, though, at @GetsBettercast. We'd be happy to listen to your ideas and opinions about how we can make the story better. I'm going to do a live drawing of our next story elements now so that we are ready for next week. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Read number 1 through 13.
7.
1, 2, 3, 4. All right. Levi has Wise Old Man. Seth, number 1 through 12.
5.
All right, Reed, you have Villain Sidekick. Seth, you have Fighting Style. And that's it. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We will see you guys next week. Bye.